the last American presidential election, 80% of American Jews voted for Mr. Obama. Latinos wasn't even nearly as close. It was 67%. Among whites in general, it was around 43%. When you factor in income, Jews being by far and away the wealthiest ethnically economic group in the United States, Jews should be voting overwhelmingly Republican. But no, they're voting Democratic because Jews are liberal. And it's now, as I said, become more and more difficult to call yourself liberal and to support Israeli policy, especially when it's liberal organizations like Human Rights Watch, liberal organizations like Amnesty International, who are in the forefront of the condemnations of Israeli conduct. And so it's quite clear, as Barbara Lubin said a few moments ago when she introduced me, and as I said about 2 years ago when I came here, it's quite clear that support for Israel is breaking up among American Jews, just as support for Israel is breaking up among the general public. And that leads to the most important question, certainly for a Berkeley audience, an audience that has a reputation for being activists and wanting not just to observe the world, but to make it a better place. And the question is, what is to be done? I think it's useful to take some insights from the Mahatma, Mr. Gandhi. I spent the better part of the last year reading through Gandhi's collected works. They're quite substantial. You'll perhaps be surprised to know they run to about 100 volumes, and each volume runs to about 500 pages. Mr. Gandhi had a lot to say about many things. Actually, the preponderance of his writing is not on politics. It's mostly on diet and health. But of course, he had a lot to say about politics as well. And he, as you know, he claimed to be the originator of the idea of nonviolent resistance. Originally, he used the term from Henry Thoreau, passive resistance, was used to describe his movement. Gandhi didn't like that term at all because he felt that nonviolent resistance was the most active form of resistance there can be. So he coined, or his cousin coined, another term. Just an aside note, time won't allow me to go into it, but there's a lot of misunderstanding about Gandhi. First of all, Gandhi was not categorically opposed to violence. That's clearly not the case. Gandhi's view was that the kind of resistance that required the most courage and bravery, the kind of resistance that required the most courage and bravery was nonviolent resistance. But if you can't find the inner resources, the inner wherewithal to practice nonviolent resistance, then Gandhi was very emphatic, then you better hit back and hit back hard. And he said, don't use my doctrine of nonviolence as a pretext and as an excuse to conceal your cowardice. Now, some people might ask, how can it be that nonviolent resistance requires more courage and bravery than violent resistance? It seems to be counterintuitive, but it's not really if you think about what Gandhi meant. Gandhi would say that if you use violent resistance, well, you have a weapon in hand, and if you're attacked, at least you have a weapon to protect you. But what he meant by nonviolent resistance was, he said, you have to show the willingness to march, as he called it, smilingly and cheerfully in the line of fire and get yourself blown to bits. That's what he meant by nonviolent resistance. And as you can imagine, that does require quite a lot of courage. In any event, he called his movement, as most of you know, Satyagraha. And Satyagraha he translated as hold on to the truth. I like that image, the idea of clinging to truth with the last gasp, your last breath. And then I think is our challenge to hold on to the truth, that what Israel has done to the Palestinians is wrong and it's indefensible. To hold on to the truth, the settlement of the conflict is possible. but it's Israel backed by the United States that's preventing a resolution of the conflict. If we learn how to wield the weapon of truth, as it's recorded in the findings of the human rights community, we learn how to wield the weapon of justice, as it's embodied in the uncontroversial principles of international law, then it seems to me that a resolution of the conflict is within reach if we hold hard, stick fast to those weapons, learn how to wield them, and also show a little bit of courage, a little bit of fortitude, just a thousandth part, really, of the courage and fortitude displayed by Jody McIntyre. I want to end on one last note because I can see Barbara is ready to take the hook and pull me off. And I want to just end, if I might, on a personal note. I very rarely introduce my person when I'm speaking. I prefer to do what I think is my responsibility, which is to go through the factual record. But here I'll speak now for myself. I'm not interested in being a victor over the Israelis or vanquishing them. I have no desire to degrade, to humiliate, or to embarrass Israel. I don't want to push it into a corner such that it feels that it has no option except to strike out. I think our concern should be one thing and one thing alone. As the old African-American spiritual put it, to keep your eyes on the prize. And to remember what that prize is. The prize is to try to reach a reasonable settlement of the conflict such that all parties to the conflict, everyone, can lead a proud, peaceful, and productive life. And if you're willing to subscribe to the most elementary principles of justice, the most elementary principles of decency, if you're willing to subscribe to those principles, then I'll quote, just as Jody McIntyre did, I'll quote the late Professor Said. At the end of his life, he liked to himself cite the Caribbean poet M.A. Cesar, and the line he liked to use was, "There's room for everyone at the rendezvous of victory." There's room for everyone at the rendezvous of victory. Just be reasonable. Just be fair. Just allow everyone to live a full life of human dignity. Allow everyone a fair chance at life's happiness, because that's what it's all about in the end. There's no guarantee of happiness in this world. Human beings seem to have a remarkable propensity for messing things up for themselves. But everybody should have the right, a fair chance at life's happiness. And I think the formula for trying to resolve the conflict is very straightforward. Number one, we have to be principled. As Mr. Gandhi liked to say, I'm all for compromise, but not when it comes to principles. Because when you start compromising principles, he says, it's all give and no take. And so nobody has the right to tell Palestinians that they should or they have to forfeit any of their rights under international law. But on the other hand, we should also be reasonable. We should show people there's a way out. It doesn't have to continue this way. Just allow for others what you want for yourself. And if we're principled and we're reasonable, then I think we can achieve a resolution of the conflict. I've been involved in this for my entire adult life. It's about 3 decades now. As I said, I first got involved in June 1982. And it's a very sobering feeling to realize that your whole life is passed, devoted to and studying one pinprick on the world's map. There's such a vast range of knowledge. Knowledge has such breadth and such depth. And yet I find myself entire life just mastering facts, periods, commas, and semicolons about the Israel-Palestine conflict. But I'm more determined than ever because of that I'm going to be there at that rendezvous of victory. And I hope I'll see all of you there with me. Thank you.